Like a grand and miraculous spaceship, our planet has sailed through the universe of time.
Like a grand and miraculous spaceship.
Grand and miraculous.
Grand and miraculous.
I think with the Muppets, there's sort of an innocence to them, you know? Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that appeals to the child in everybody. Because I think everybody is there's a child in everybody still.
Well, we all want to build a time machine, don't we? So when you enter Disneyland, you're entering a time machine.
I only hope that we never lose sight of one thing, that it was all started by a mouse.
Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 17. Can't believe that we've gone through 17 episodes. Thank you for being here along the way. This is Grand and Miraculous. My name is John, aka Spaceship Ears. I want to welcome everybody who is here. I was chatting with some great people before the show started. We have a banger tonight. We have a wonderful ride to talk about, one that's near and dear to our hearts. And I hope we enjoy the ride along the way, because that's what that attraction is all about. It's about transportation. So we're going to have some fun. First and foremost, let me acknowledge a few things. We are amazingly, shockingly, and I'm so grateful, we are at more than 450 subscribers. We took a huge jump up after Retro Magic, and I'm super grateful to everybody who talked about us and suggested other people come and subscribe to us. It's kind of I'm not doing this for the subscriber numbers, but it's nice to know that there's some validation out there, or at least some curious people interested in what we're doing here. So first and foremost, if you're new here, I want to welcome you. Thank you for being here. If you've been here since episode 1, doubly grateful. Thank you for being here. And for those of you who are new to this show, this is our mission statement. This is what we do here. We're here to unveil the magic behind theme park attractions, to explore their creators, their immersive worlds, and the moments that keep us coming back, with your voice shaping the journey. This is not just me spouting off for an hour. This is a community effort. So together, we'll try to dissect these attractions that we know and love and try to see how they tick. I believe once we gain deeper understanding and deeper appreciation of these attractions, we can go on them. Well, not in World of Motion's case, but we can go on them in general and have more appreciation for the efforts put into it. Let me pop over to chat. I see some great people who are here. So Beaker and Honeydew was first in. It's great to see you guys. I hope you're doing well if you're listening to the replay or if you're here. Lamont Gray is in the house. Hey, Lamont, you're a great supporter. I appreciate it. Similarly, Dave's Disney Dreams. Great to see you, my friend. Miss K Bell is in the house. Thank you for being here, as always. Miss Karen Cook. Hi, Karen. Hope you're doing great. It's great to see you again. Scrolling down, Mr. Jason Thibodeau. Thank you for being here, Jason. Appreciate all your support. Mr. Mark Langenkamp. Mr. Mark, it's great to talk to you and to see you, and I'm so grateful that you're here. Thank you. Scroll down. Park Bros. Hey, Lawrence. Hope you're doing great. If you haven't noticed, I'm pitching the Disney Streamer Network, and I'll talk about it again in a little bit. Miss Oodalali Lane. Kate, thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting me. And I think, oh, Dad's in the house. Hello, Pops. Let's see, who else is here? Brittany is in the house. Hey, Brittany, thanks for being here. So, let's start the show rolling, shall we say. As we usually do, we start off our shows with a little bit of trivia. And tonight's trivia is, how many audio animatronic figures were in World of Motion? So this is going to be super easy for you if you cheat, because all it takes is one web search and one lookup, and you can find out the answer. But try your best not to cheat and try to guesstimate how many audio animatronics characters were in the show. And we'll get to the answer in a little bit. I'd also like to encourage you to share your memories of this great attraction. It's no longer with us, sadly, but lots of people have lots of strong memories of it, especially the music. And we'll talk about all that fun stuff in a little bit. As always, I'd like to encourage you to go to our website. Go to grandmiraculous.com. There's no and in the website. Just go to grandmiraculous.com and you'll see a section of the website where it encourages you to vote. And you can vote along the same 3 pillars that I'll talk about in a little bit. Tonight's entry code, if you choose to go there and contribute your voice, is WARD, W-A-R-D. And if you don't know why that is, you'll find out very shortly. Okay, let's go to the deck. And tonight we're talking about a beloved attraction, World of Motion. Of course, you know it. Today is Test Track, but originally it was a much different pavilion and a much different attraction. By the way, before I get into tonight's show, last week we did a special episode and we talked about retro magic. I'll talk about the Lake Buena Vista Historical Society in a little bit. But one thing, I just want to do a PSA. One thing I didn't realize at the time when I broadcast that episode last Tuesday was that our friend Josh at Resort TV 1 was also doing a premiere episode talking about his experiences at Retro Magic. I had no idea he was going live at the time with his premiere, but I'm going to drop the link in the chat. There's no need for mods to do anything, but I would like to highly encourage you, go to Resort TV 1 and check out what they did for Retro Magic. Josh had lots of great video footage, and it was great to relive the show again. So please go and support Josh. And for anybody watching, know that there was no animosity. You know, Josh and I are great partners, so I'm very grateful for his friendship. Please go support him. Okay, let's talk about World of Motion a little bit. So for those of you who are new to the show, let me do a brief methodology recap. So I assert that evaluating theme park attractions, of course, is very subjective. You ask 10 people, you'll get 100 answers. So I'm trying to dissect this along 3 separate pillars. One is immersion, second is storytelling, and the third is delight. Now, you know, the jury's out about whether these are the right 3 pillars to take or not. In fact, I got some really good feedback during Retro Magic on maybe we should adapt and change one of these pillars, but I'll save that for another show. Anyhow, I'm representing these 3 pillars via radar plots. Basically, the more that blue that you see in the triangle, the stronger the overall score is. And again, I want to emphasize this is not a monologue. I need your voice. This is a community effort. So please go to grandmiraculous.com and you can use the code WARD, W-A-R-D, tonight. Again, I want to highlight we are a proud member of the Disney Streamer Network. I saw Park Bros in there, Lawrence. Thank you so much for setting this up. This is super cool. If you haven't seen it, you can go to these links, especially dsn.disneystreams.com, and you can see who's live at any given moment. And we're up there, and I'm so grateful for Lawrence's support. Please go support them. It's a great initiative. And once again, I'd like to highlight the Lake Buena Vista Historical Society. My gosh, they pulled off such an amazing show last weekend for Retro Magic. And in case you didn't hear the news, they teased Retro Magic 2027. It'll be coming to California, which for the first time, I believe. So that'll be a super exciting show. For those of you who don't know them, please go follow them. They're Retro WDW. and Lake Buena Vista Historical Society. All right, World of Motion. This is a little intimidating because this is one of the core pavilions of Epcot when it first opened. It's a fantastic pavilion with an attraction that lodged very deeply into our memories. And I'll explain why in a little bit for those of you who haven't been on it. Before I get into the actual attraction, what I like to do is to go through some key Imagineers. These Imagineers, of course, don't represent everybody who worked on the pavilion, but they represent kind of a baseball card theory about all the major Imagineers. And the first one to highlight is Claude Coates. It seems that we talk about Claude Coates on every single episode here, and there's a good reason for that. Claude had his hands in so many different attractions. I think we've talked about Claude ever since episode 1, Peter Pan. So for those of you who don't know, Claude has a long history in Disney. He was a key designer for all kinds of attractions, and World of Motion is one of them. Marc Davis, we have to acknowledge Marc Davis's impact on this attraction. If you've seen previous episodes, you'll know that Marc Davis is known for providing more comedic bits and comedic kind of scenes to each of these attractions that he had his hand on. And World of Motion is no different. You know, those of you who remember the attraction know that it had lots of great comedic bits. And Marc Davis was one of the 9 old men, and he provided that comedy basis just as well as he did any other attraction. Ward Kimball, we finally get to acknowledge Ward. Ward Kimball, for those of you who don't know, is also one of the 9 old men. And he was born in 1914 in Minnesota. He studied at the Santa Barbara School of the Arts before joining Disney in 1934. He started as an in-betweener, and he worked on characters like Jiminy Cricket, the Cheshire Cat, etc. He directed Disney's space theme specials. You may remember all of those great shows. And he won an Oscar for Toot, Whistle, Plunk, and Boom, a show that he worked on and directed himself, showcasing bold, stylized animation. Now, he had a big passion for trains, and that passion for trains influenced Walt Disney. So you can probably thank Ward Kimball for the train that you know and love around the park. Basically, Ward left a legacy of playful, irreverent storytelling, shaping Disney's creative voice with wit, warmth, and innovation. And I'm super grateful that we get to highlight him. Buddy Baker, we've talked about Mr. Baker before as an amazing composer. I won't go through his bio, but there's a very, very famous song that we'll talk about in a bit, and that was due to Mr. Buddy Baker and this gentleman that we've also talked about, X Atencio. X is another legend that you'll see many, many times in this series. And X was known for providing amazing lyrics, scripts, things like that. And he also had a hand in that song. Okay, let's get into it. Before I get into the details, let me pop over to chat. I want to say hello to some new folks. Reply by mail. Thank you for being here. It's okay if you're late. All good. Gloria Thibodeau. Hey, Gloria. It's great to see you. Theme Park Giant. Mr. Thad, it's great to have you here. I hope you're doing great. Monorail Molly's in the house. Thank you for all your support. Appreciate everything you do, Molly. And I think that's it for now. If I miss you, I will come back and say hi later. So, World of Motion. Obviously, there was only one instance of it, and it was at Epcot. It opened on opening day, October 1st, 1982. And it closed about 14 years later, on January 2nd, 1996. In the early days of Epcot Center, essentially underneath this giant silver cylindrical structure, there was a pavilion that invited guests to laugh, learn, and imagine. World of Motion, it wasn't just a ride, it was a celebration of human ingenuity, and it was told with charm, wit, and a touch of theatrical whimsy. It was sponsored by General Motors, and it traced our journey from foot power to freeways, from cavemen to center core, with dozens of scenes and hundreds of audio animatronics. Now, Imagineers Claude Coates and Ward Kimball, who we already talked about, these were 2 legends of Disney storytelling. They infused the experience with humor and heart, making history feel alive, kinetic, and joyfully absurd. And that's something I want to highlight. And through it all, a musical thread tied the scenes together. And of course, that's our favorite song, It's Fun to Be Free. This theme song danced through centuries of progress, reminding us that motion isn't just mechanical, it's emotional. This was Epcot at its most optimistic. It was a place where education met entertainment and where the future was always right around the corner. Today, we begin our own journey through time, revisiting the legacy of World of Motion, and we are going to do this one scene, one story, one smile at a time. Now, when Epcot Center first opened in 1982, it wasn't just a theme park. It was a statement. It was a permanent World's Fair built on Walt Disney's dream of progress, community, and innovation. And transportation was a central concept to that vision. From the people mover to the monorail, Walt believed mobility could shape better cities and better lives. World of Motion carried that torch. It traced our journey from foot power to freeways, from ancient chariots to imagined highways of tomorrow. And it wasn't just about vehicles. It was about vision. It was about how each leap in transportation reshaped the way we live, connect, and dream, and affected our society. Sponsored by General Motors, like I said, the pavilion stood as both tribute and forecast. It honored the past while imagining the future. In Epcot's tapestry of ideas, World of Motion was a thread of movement, momentum, and mirth. It was a reminder that progress isn't just mechanical, it was personal, and that every journey begins with a spark of curiosity. Now, why GM? Well, in the early 1980s, Epcot Center was more than just a theme park, as you all know. It was a partnership, and each pavilion had different corporate partners. While Disney's vision of a permanent World's Fair needed corporate allies, and GM stepped forward with bold ambition. As the world's largest automaker, GM saw World of Motion as a chance to align its brand with progress, education, and imagination. But this wasn't just marketing. It was a creative collaboration. GM gave Imagineers lots of room to play, resulting in a ride that was funny, expansive, and deeply human. From cavemen to concept cars, World of Motion celebrated movement in all its forms, while Trans Center, GM's exhibit hall, grounded that celebration in real-world research that you could feel and touch. That partnership set a precedent. Corporate sponsorship that didn't dilute the magic but amplified it, in fact. And for guests, it meant a pavilion that felt both visionary and tangible. It was a place where storytelling met engineering and where the future felt just around the corner. Now, who was behind this great attraction? World of Motion wasn't just a ride. The artists behind it were Imagineering legends. Claude Coates, a master of mood and scene. He painted the attraction's sweeping scenes with a storyteller's eye. Ward Kimball, one of Walt's original 9 Old Men, he brought a reverence and charm, and he turned historical moments into laugh-out-loud vignettes. Now, their work was supported by a team of designers, sculptors, and engineers who understood that humor could be a powerful teacher. We haven't really touched on humor so much in this series so far, but we'll be talking about why humor can actually enhance the educational process. Suffice to say, there were over 150 audio animatronics on this ride, and that's a little clue to our trivia question tonight. Each one was expressive, kinetic, and lovingly absurd. From cavemen to commuters, the characters weren't just props. They were personalities. And behind every scene was a belief that history, when told with heart, could inspire wonder. Now, this was Imagineering at its absolute best, when artistry met innovation and where the past came alive with a wink and a smile. Let's talk about Claude Coates a bit. He didn't just design attractions, he painted worlds. A background artist on Disney's earliest animated films, he brought a painter's eye to Imagineering. He shaped environments with mood, scale, and story. Now, in World of Motion, his touch is unmistakable. There were vast scenes that were unfolding like murals, each one rich with color, clarity, and quiet humor. One of the reasons I talk about Claude Coates so much is that he truly believed in immersion, not through spectacle, but through atmosphere. He was an atmospheric genius. His scenes didn't shout, they invited. From ancient caravans to the futuristic highways, he used composition to guide the eye and whimsy to guide the heart. The result was a ride that felt both grand and gentle at the same time. World of Motion was one of his final works, a culmination of decades spent crafting spaces that made us feel deeply. And in every turn of the Omnimover, he brought artistry to the forefront. like I mentioned, this ride would be nothing without this man, Mr. Ward Kimball. Ward Kimball, in case you don't know, he didn't just animate characters, he animated ideas. He was one of Walt's 9 old men, and he was known for his very wild style, his musical mind, and his love of the absolute absurd. And in World of Motion, that spirit was perfectly alive. Historical scenes, they weren't just dry, they were funny. A caveman tripping over his own invention, a Renaissance dreamer flapping towards the sky, a traffic jam so chaotic it felt like slapstick theater. Now, Ward Kimball believed that humor was a bridge, that if you could make someone laugh, you could make them actually learn at the same time. His designs were exaggerated, expressive, and deeply human. They reminded us that progress isn't always graceful, and that sometimes when you're trying to get to innovation, it's paved with pratfalls and humor. World of Motion was one of his final gifts to Imagineering. Now, this was a ride that didn't just move, it danced with Ward Kimball's humor. And with every scene, you could hear his voice whispering, "Don't take history too seriously. It's fun to be free." Now, at the heart of Epcot, of course, was a promise. Learning could be joyful. World of Motion took that promise seriously and playfully. And it didn't lecture guests about transportation history. It invited them to laugh, wonder, and connect. Imagineers used humor as a teaching tool. And going through the ride's music, visuals, and pacing, it wasn't just about vehicles at the end of the day. It was about the people behind them. World of Motion, it didn't simplify the history it was trying to teach. It made it sing through its visuals and through its humor, and of course, through its music. And it modeled a new kind of theme park experience at the time. It was a new type of experience that affirmed intelligence, celebrated imagination, and reminded us that education didn't have to be serious all the time. Now, there were several design challenges. Building this structure was no small feat. Imagineers had to choreograph over 150 audio animatronics across 24 different scenes. Each one was timed to music, narration, and movement. Now, the Omnimover system, we've talked about that before, the system that runs Haunted Mansion and other famous attractions. That was used in this attraction as well. However, there were some challenges. It had to climb a steep incline inside the structure, and it guided guests towards the futuristic finale. And of course, we all remember the opening or the entrance to the pavilion where you saw guests making that curve around the entrance. But this wasn't just technical at the end of the day. It had to be theatrical, just like the other attractions. Humor had to land and history had to make sense. And every scene had to feel alive. Lighting, sound design, and things like that became silent storytellers. It directed attention and preserved comedic timing. So this was very much a timed experience, just like anything else, where the creators were trying to guide you through separate scenes and make those comedic bits hit at the right time. Anybody who's ever attempted comedy says comedy is infinitely harder than drama. So to create an attraction where these comedic bits actually hit well is a mark of true talent. The Omnimover system, we talked a little bit about it. The vehicle that carried us through the World of Motion was as much a storyteller as the scenes that were described themselves. It was first used in the Haunted Mansion, and it offered continuous flow and precise control. Each vehicle rotated gently, and it framed scenes like a camera lens. That was one of the brilliant parts about the Omnimover. It guided our gaze, preserved punchlines, and ensured no detail was missed. It allowed Imagineers to choreograph the experience, turning history into a living mural that unfolded with rhythm and with grace. Now, building the pavilion was a big challenge. World of Motion didn't just tell a story, it lived inside one. The pavilion's architecture was bold, elegant, and unmistakably Epcot. It was a huge, gleaming silver cylinder rising from Future World. It was a circular shape echoing the very theme it housed: motion, continuity, and progress. And it made a lot of sense. You know, it was highlighting transportation. It was highlighting the wheel. Why shouldn't the building be a wheel as well? Now inside, Imagineers built one of the largest ride systems Disney had ever attempted. Over 60,000 square feet of track, scenes, and infrastructure, and it was designed to carry guests through centuries of transportation history. Now the Omnimover climbed, curved, and descended, culminating in a finale called Center Core, and that was a kinetic sculpture of imagined highways and future cities. But the pavilion didn't end there. At the end, at the unload platform, guests exited into a section called Trans Center. And Trans Center was a post-show exhibit area where GM showcased real-world innovations, concept cars, and interactive displays. That building itself was a statement. Storytelling and science could share the same space. And that Epcot's vision wasn't just about rides. It was about places that made you think, feel, and dream. So I'd like to play a little video now of the construction of World of Motion. Let's see if this works.
Fun to be free on the move, to go anywhere, with never a care to do all you wanted to do. It's fun to be free, it's fun to be free, to be on the move, to go where you please, with comfort and ease to see all there is to be seen. It's fun to be free. It's fun to be free, to be on the move, to go anywhere, with never a care to do all you wanted to do. It's fun to be free, it's fun to be free,
You get the hang of it. And I love watching the video of the cars being lifted into place and so forth. And just watching that, you get a sense of how big this building is. It was a huge building, and it was very, very challenging to make it all fit. Let me throw this up here and go to the next slide. So World of Motion, it wasn't just a ride, it was a time machine, kind of like Spaceship Earth in that sense. Guests boarded Omnimover vehicles and embarked on a journey through the ages, tracing the evolution of transportation from foot power to freeways. Now, the attraction itself unfolded in 24 different scenes, and each one was a playful snapshot of that moment in time. For example, cavemen discovering the wheel, sailors braving the seas, inventors dreaming of flight, commuters stuck in traffic. Now, there were over 150 audio animatronics bringing these moments to life, not with solemnity, but with satire. Imagineers used humor to make history feel human, and the tone was light, the pacing was brisk. And just when guests thought the journey was over, they ascended into Center Core, and this was a kinetic sculpture of imagined freeways and futuristic cities. It was Epcot's vision made tangible. It was a future shaped by curiosity and creativity. And it was all prompted by a question we know and love. It's statement, really. It's fun to be free. Now, I'm not going to play some video to go through the ride. That's not really what this channel is about. I don't want to turn it into a ride through of every attraction. We have a playlist that you can go check out, and it has lots of attraction ride throughs. I'm much more interested in the analysis of these rides. So I'm going to go briefly through each scene just to remind you. I mean, it's been many, many years since we've all ridden this ride. I just want to briefly remind you about what happened in the ride. So scene one, when you first enter the building, it begins not with a wheel, but with a wobble. A lone caveman, hunched and struggling, drags a heavy load across a prehistoric landscape. There were no carts, there were no roads, there was just foot power and frustration. And that was our first interaction with the first comedic bit. You saw this caveman that was furiously blowing on his foot that happened to be red. It's a scene played for laughs, but beneath the comedy was a real truth that every innovation starts with discomfort. You have to actually experience some pain to be able to realize, hey, there's something better that we can do that can encourage society to move forward. So the caveman's posture, his tired expression, his clumsy gait, they're all reminders that necessity is a mother of invention. Imagineers chose humor here not to mock, but to connect, because we've all been there and we've all felt that burden. That moment when the task is too big and the solution isn't there yet. That opening scene set the tone for the whole attraction. It was playful, human, and gently profound. And it reminds us that progress doesn't begin with brilliance, it begins with a problem. And sometimes the first step forward is literally the first step. Scene 2 brought us to a famous scene in World of Motion where something happened. Something round came into play. A caveman stands triumphant, holding aloft a simple circle carved from stone, the wheel. And around him, others react with comic disbelief. One scratches their head, another stares in awe, and the third looks ready to roll away. It's a moment of exaggerated celebration, especially as these poor inventors start showing off their versions of the wheel, but with only one gentleman actually showing off a wheel that will work. Now, they frame this scene like a theatrical reveal using expressive animatronics and clever staging. And it's clever, because from this moment on, the ride accelerates. Progress begins to roll forward, literally and metaphorically. The wheel reminds us that innovation often starts small. There's just one idea, one shape, one little spark. Sorry, different ride. And suddenly the world is in motion. Then we move on to the ancient civilizations. The wheel moves forward, and suddenly it's everywhere. In the bustling streets of ancient cities, chariots clatter across cobblestones. Egyptian nobles ride in style. Roman soldiers march with purpose. And Greek philosophers ride with flair. Now, this scene is a celebration of early infrastructure, kind of like Spaceship Earth, and it touches on how invention became civilization itself. Roads appear, systems emerge, and transportation begins to shape not just movement, but meaning. Imagineers filled the scene with architectural flourishes and expressive characters. Of course, there's satire and there's comedy like the rest of the show, but there's also a touch of admiration about what these people went through in terms of bringing technology to our society. This is where mobility becomes momentum, where the wheel stops becoming a novelty, but becomes a necessity. And as a ride moves forward, you'll start to see that pattern over and over again. That progress, it starts with discomfort, and then someone invents something, and it becomes absolutely necessary to human civilization. This is about adoption, collaboration, and the shared desire to go farther, faster, and together. Scene 4, we have the famous scene with Mona Lisa tapping her foot, waiting for Leonardo to come back. This was a great scene, and you'll often see it in a lot of preview videos for Walt Disney World. Of course, the Renaissance was a time of brilliance and beauty, but also bold miscalculations. Of course, here we meet a dreamer. His contraption is a tangle of wings, gears, and hope. Inspired by Leonardo da Vinci, this poor inventor flaps with theatrical determination, ready to defy gravity, with little more than optimism and elbow grease. Now, this machine is absurd, the outcome inevitable, but you can't dispute the spirit, and that's what's on display here. Imagineers play this moment for laughs, but the message is very profound. Progress isn't always graceful. It's going to be messy. Sometimes it's a leap of faith followed by a gentle crash. And this scene reminds us that failure isn't the opposite of innovation. It's actually a core part of it. And in that flapping and flailing moment, we see ourselves in that scene. We're not perfect. We're not polished, but we're reaching for something better, because to move forward, we have to lift off first. And of course, the scene with the Mona Lisa expressing annoyance and impatience at Leonardo was just the cherry on top. Then we move into a scene with lots of different transportation techniques. Of course, the wheel gave us roads, but the horizon called for more. In this scene, we saw people setting sail into the age of exploration. There were wooden ships creaking under canvas sails. There were steam engines hissing with newfound power. And on deck, there were a cast of characters worthy of a comedy. There were seasick sailors clutching their stomachs, captains barking orders, inventors tinkering. It's total chaos, but at the same time, it was progress. It was motion in all its messy glory. Imagineers used nautical set pieces here and very expressive animatronics to capture the spirit of adventure. And of course, there is discomfort that comes with it. Now, the transition from sail to steam, like you see in the train picture, it wasn't just technological, it was emotional. And of course, you know, having Ward Kimball work on this ride, you know that this train scene was very special to him. It marks a shift from wind and whim to precision and power. And through it all, this message is very clear. Exploration is messy. It's brave. It's bold. Sometimes it's a little seasick. But every wave we cross brings us closer to connecting our society ever closer together. And every journey begins with the courage to leave shore. Finally, we enter the bicycle craze, and the world feels smaller and faster. In this scene, we enter the age of personal mobility for the first time. Bicycles glide through city streets. Their riders smile with newfound freedom. For many, it's the first taste of independence. No horses, no tickets to pay, just motion. You hop on a bike, powered by muscle and will. Imagineers captured this joy very well with expressive characters and elegant staging, just like before. There was a woman with bloomers who coasts past a startled gentleman. There was a worker pedaling proudly to his destination. But progress doesn't pause. Around the corner, you know what's coming next, early automobiles. They're sputtering to life, loud, clunky, and full of ambition. And this contrast is comic. Graceful bicycles were meeting noisy engines, and the street became literally a stage for transition. Now, this moment marks a shift, not just in technology, but in identity itself. Transportation becomes personal, and with it, a new kind of freedom takes hold. Now, this scene reminds us that innovation isn't always smooth, but it's always moving, just like the other scenes. And sometimes the road to the future begins with just a pedal. Now we get to the big scene and the famous wreck of all the vehicles. And like Roger Ebert once said, whenever you have a wreck, you've got to have a wagon full of vegetables to tilt over. And this was no exception. Progress picks up speed, and the streets themselves can't keep up. In this scene, we enter the heart of the Industrial Revolution. There were trains whistling. There were trolleys clanging. Early automobiles sputtered and honked. It's a city in motion and in mayhem. Imagineers crafted a layered soundscape on a crowded stage where every character seems slightly overwhelmed by the pace of the change that they have to go through. A businessman dodges a horse-drawn carriage. A motorist argues with a traffic officer. A pedestrian clutches their hat as a trolley zooms by. It's funny, it's frantic, and it's familiar because we can all relate to it. Every leap forward brings growing pains. Again, that's a pattern you see over and over again in this attraction. You start with discomfort, you have an invention, and you may have some growing pains, but eventually it becomes a necessity. Of course, the Industrial Revolution gave us speed, but not always clarity. Of course, cities expanded, the infrastructure lagged behind sometimes. And in this moment of urban chaos, we're reminded that progress isn't just about invention, it's about adaptation. Interestingly, this scene is a mirror. As you all know, Walt Disney originally planned Epcot to be a city of the future. So this moment lets us remember that even when we're dreaming up fantastic new cities of the future, society is going to go through some growing pains and some hard times as we adopt to new technology. So this scene is kind of a mirror held up to our society, but with a wink. And then we start to take flight. The wheels turned, the engines roared, and suddenly we're airborne. World of Motion's aviation scene captured the thrill of early flight. Couples posed besides biplanes, dressed in their Sunday best, beaming with pride. There was theatrical staging, there was playful tone at play. But beneath the humor was a slightly different or deeper truth. That flight really changed everything. It significantly shrank distances between people. It expanded dreams, and it reminded us that motion isn't just about getting there, it's about daring to go in the first place. This moment in the ride lifted the story, literally and emotionally, from the ground to the sky, from invention to aspiration. And in every propeller spin and proud pose, it whispered, we're not just moving, we're soaring, so to speak. And then we enter a few tunnels. Now, those of you who may remember the original People Mover in Disneyland may have some memories floating back to you, because at this moment in the attraction, you had the same kind of tunnels that you went through as in the People Mover super speed tunnels. Now, of course, history fades at this moment, but now we start to get into the world of possibility. We start to leave the past behind and we ascend into the imagined future. There were stylized highways projected, curving through glowing landscapes, vehicles gliding in synchronized motion, cities shimmering in the distance. There were no traffic jams, no honking horns. There was just harmony. Imagineers used sculptural forms and lighting effects to evoke motion, not through characters at this point, but through pure design. It's a kinetic ballet, kind of, where infrastructure becomes art. The scene contrasts sharply with the chaos we just went through, and it offers a vision of what transportation could be: efficient, elegant, and interconnected. Now, this isn't a prediction, it's a provocation. It's a reminder that the future isn't something we wait for, it's something that we have to go and build. And as guests ride towards Center Core, this is a message that becomes clear. Motion isn't just about where we've been, it's about where we're willing and daring to go. And then we enter Center Core, the finale of World of Motion. The journey ends not with a scene, but with a sculpture. Center Core, it rose like a beacon, glowing with motion and possibility. There were stylized highways spiraling upwards, futuristic vehicles gliding in synchronized loops, cities shimmering in abstract forms. Now, there were no characters here. There was no dialogue, no movement. Imagineers let the design speak for itself. A kinetic metaphor for progress, connection, and imagination. The music, of course, swelled at this moment, the lights pulsed, and guests ascended into a future, and it felt both distant and familiar at the same time. It wasn't a prediction, it was a promise that motion will continue, innovation will evolve, and that the road ahead is our societies to shape. And it's a finale that doesn't conclude, it uplifts, and it makes you feel good about the potential future. At this point, guests exited into Trans Center, but the message was lingering. The future isn't waiting, it's already in motion. Now, before I get into some other aspects of the ride, I want to briefly pop over to chat and welcome in some people who came in during that very brief survey of the attraction. Mr. David T is in the house. Hello, David T. And I saw some other great friends in here. Scream Park Casual, not Theme Park Casual. Hey, Danny, hope you're doing fantastic. Thanks for being here. And let's see. I think there were a bunch of chat messages. Oh, Retro WDW is in the house. Hello, my friends. Thank you so much for last weekend. It was a phenomenal event. Please, folks, go support Lake Buena Vista Historical Society. Throw them a few bucks. They do great work. Okay. And again, because I always forget, please like, subscribe, and share out this stream if you find it interesting. Excuse me. Now we're going to talk about some other aspects of the attraction. And of course, one of the most famous aspects is the theme song. Every journey needs a soundtrack, of course. And for World of Motion, this soundtrack was a single joyful melody. And it was reimagined again and again, kind of like It's a Small World. And of course, this song was It's Fun to Be Free. This song was composed by Buddy Baker. A lot of people think the Sherman Brothers didn't, but no, it was Buddy Baker, and lyrics were written by X Atencio. And this wasn't just a theme song. This was a narrative thread that wound its way throughout the whole attraction. In each scene, the tune itself transformed. For example, it was a Renaissance flute, and then it turned into a ragtime piano, and it was a jazzy horn section, etc. The melody adapted to the moment it was portraying, but it was the same melody over again, basically reaffirming the same message throughout history. And the lyrics were super simple, playful, and profound. It's fun to be free, to be on the move, and you know the rest. I'm not going to sing it. And they reminded us that motion isn't just mechanical, it's emotional. And that freedom, curiosity, and progress are deeply human. And of course, in Center Core, at the finale of the ride, the song returned. It was wordless at this point. It was purely orchestral, and it was soaring, a final note of wonder. And it was a musical whisper that said, the future is calling, and it's fun to be free. We got to talk about the animatronics. They didn't just move, they performed. There were so many audio animatronics on this attraction. And they were more than machines. They were characters. There were actually 188 audio animatronics on World of Motion, which is mind-blowing if you think about it. And each one was crafted with theatrical precision and comedic timing. For example, a caveman hunched over in frustration. There was a flapper waving from a stalled convertible. Now, all of their movements were exaggerated, but their expressions were clear because Imagineers knew that humor lives in timing, like I mentioned earlier, and emotion lives in detail. Scenes were choreographed like stage plays. They had layered motion guiding the eye towards certain parts that the Imagineers wanted you to focus on. And even in chaos, there was clarity. There were silhouettes that were readable. There were purposeful gestures, and then every figure told a story. It wasn't just about transportation, but about humanity and how we invent things to propel ourselves forward. These weren't just props. They were people that we could relate with. And in their kinetic energy, we saw ourselves. Curious, clumsy, determined, but always in motion. Now, World of Motion didn't just teach, it delighted. And as you know, delight is one of our core pillars. From its opening day in 1982, guests really responded to this attraction with laughter, curiosity, and joy. Families found it accessible, and children, of course, giggled at the figures, and of course, the traffic jam. Adults admired the staging and subtle satire. And of course, the music stuck in everybody's head. The animatronics stuck in their hearts because It's Fun to Be Free became more than just a theme, it became a memory. For many, the ride was a gentle introduction to Epcot's mission. Learning could be light and progress could be playful. And even after it closed in 1996, fans continued to share stories, photos, and tributes, especially about the theme song. In fact, there's even one streamer I know who's dedicated his whole name of his channel after this theme song. It's Fun to Be Free. There were online forums, there were fan sites and retrospectives, and it kept the spirit of this attraction alive. World of Motion wasn't just about transportation. It was about connection. Every scene, every smile, every song reminded us that motion is human and it's fun to be free. Now, what was great about this attraction is that it was a classroom in motion. From cavemen to center core, of course, it taught transportation history, but it did it with humor, heart, and theatrical flair. But beneath the laughter itself was a deeper purpose. Epcot was built on the belief that education could be joyful, that curiosity could be cultivated through storytelling. World of Motion truly embodied that belief. And if you'll forgive me for saying so, that belief is all but obliterated this day in Epcot. There are a few attractions that still carry forward that mission. God bless them. I hope they continue to do so. But one thing I love about World of Motion is that it truly embodied the mission of Epcot, that we could educate through entertainment. And of course, this attraction didn't simplify history, it humanized it. Each scene invited reflection. We got to think about invention. We got to think about the troubles we went through, especially as we started adapting to these new technologies and the messy beauty of progress. And in many ways, it was the other side of the coin of carousel of progress in many true ways. So basically, this ride fulfilled Epcot's mission. It uplifted, it inspired us, and it reminded us that the future belongs to the curious. Whoa, sorry. We got to talk about the humor a little bit. World of Motion didn't lecture, it laughed, and it really leaned into the comedy. From cavemen to commuters, it used humor to make history feel human. Now, scenes were exaggerated, expressive, and theatrical. There was a Renaissance inventor, like I mentioned, the Mona Lisa tapping her shoes, things like that. These weren't just jokes, they were bridges to understanding. They were bridges to empathy and curiosity. And the key thing here is that Imagineers know that humor disarms people. And in so doing, it invites you into the story. It makes space for learning without fear. The comedy, of course, was layered. There were visual gags that kids really loved, clever staging for adults, and there was emotional rhythm for everybody. And through it all, the message was super clear. Progress is messy. People are funny. And motion at its heart is a story worth smiling about. I want to play a quick video of Ward Kimball. This is actually Ward at this was a video shown at a previous Retro Magic. So I'm super grateful to the Retro WDW guys showing us.
We take each serious episode in history of how man got around in these vehicles, and we'd say, what can we do to get a little chuckle, a slight whimsical laugh? And my training as a gag man in the early days of Disney's, where we used to be paid $5 for a gag and $10 for a really good gag, it developed all of us to think that way. So coming on the transportation ride problem, I applied the same rules. We weren't making a film necessarily, but the rules of entertainment and staging and developing a gag, the timing, were all the same. The main thing was to make this ride look authentic. All of the wagons, all of the props, as I said before, had to be right out of the history book. No cheating. The costumes had to be correct, the right period. And if our situation involved a little imagination, or we'd go for a laugh, fine, but it had to look authentic.
And that final word he used is so critical, authenticity. Obviously, it was comedic and it was cartoony, but at the core of it, it was authentic, and that's why people bonded with it so deeply. And we got to talk about GM a little bit. Of course, GM had a huge influence on this attraction. There was a powerful partner at play. As a pavilion sponsor, GM helped shape the message of World of Motion, not through overt branding all over the place, but through alignment. This ride celebrated transportation history with humor and heart. And GM's presence reminded guests that motion wasn't just a story, it was a future being built, especially in Trans Center, where guests got to explore concept cars, interactive exhibits, and real-world innovations. This was a bridge between imagination and industry. This was a place where Epcot's optimism met GM's engineering, and the partnership worked because it respected the audience. The ride remained playful and theatrical, but it was also emotionally resonant. And GM's influence added depth. It grounded the whimsy in possibility. And it really, as you entered Trans Center, it really gave you that bridge to what could be. And they basically told a simple truth. The future is not corporate, it's collaborative. Now, Trans Center itself was a huge space. Some of you may remember. At the point when the ride ended, the journey itself continued because guests started wandering into this huge exhibit area. And it was more than a post show, it was a playground. This exhibit space invited guests to explore the future of transportation, not through fiction, but through function. There were concept cars that gleamed under spotlights. Robots cracked jokes and answered questions. There were interactive displays, turned curiosity into conversation. And there were many different types of exhibits like Bird and the Robot, Lean Machine, and Aero Test. These blended humor with engineering, making innovation feel personal. And this space extended the message of this attraction, that progress is both imagined and it's engineered. What I want to play right now is just a brief clip of Bird and the Robot. For those of you who may remember it, this was actually an audio on... Whoa, sorry. This was actually an audio animatronic bird that had a cigar in its mouth. Yes, I'm not kidding.
One. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, General Motors is proud to present the one, the only, Bide. Hiya, folks, and welcome to my show. My name is Bide, and I'm here to entertain, educate, and amaze, for I am an audio animatronicated figure. I'd like to introduce my assistant. He's a robot. I call him Tiger. Come on, Tiger. Help me entertain tonight's people. Tiger! He's a little shy. See, folks, I'm in the show biz since I was an egg. But Tiger here, he's in manufacturing. He's got no aim in life beyond making a better car for you folks to drive. But today...
Anyway, you get the message. I'm not going to play the whole thing, but you can go to our playlist. Thank you again to Lake Buena Vista Historical Society. They preserve many of these videos and make them relivable, and I'm so grateful for what they do. One other fun little video was just a very short clip of people walking into Trans Center, for those of you who may not remember it. I don't know if many of you remember that, but walking into that exhibit area and seeing all the concept cars was super cool. So we got to talk about its closure. Why did it end? What happened? Well, all journeys end, of course, even the joyful ones. On January 2nd, 1996, World of Motion closed its doors. Now, the decision wasn't about failure. It was about evolution. Epcot at the time was changing. Guests started seeking thrills, speed, and immersion. And General Motors was still committed to the mission and to the pavilion, but they wanted a new way to showcase this type of innovation. And the result, of course, we all know it as Test Track, a high-speed, data-driven experience focused on automotive testing. But many people felt that this closure was personal. World of Motion had been more than a ride. It had been a memory, a melody, and a mirror. Its humor and its heart and its theatricality really left a mark and is sorely missed by many people. And of course, the vehicles changed, but the message was still there, that motion is more than mechanics, it's meaning. And as we accelerate into the future, we carry the stories that got us here. Now, the shift in tone was notable. In 1999, Test Track opened in the same space. Now, gone were the cavemen, the flappers, all the dreamers. In its place, steel, speed, and simulation. Test Track focused on automotive testing, brakes, handling, acceleration. The humor gave way to realism. The history gave way to data. It was immersive, thrilling, and aligned with GM's branding. But many people felt it was a departure from the original attraction. World of Motion had been a story, and it walked us through history. Test Track was more of a system. And this shift reflected changing guest expectations and a broader trend towards thrill-based design. But both attractions shared a core belief that motion matters. Transportation affects our lives deeply, and the road ahead is always worth exploring. Of course, fan memories are very strong with this attraction. You know, some rides entertain, but others endure. World of Motion was one of them that did both. For many guests, it was their first glimpse of Epcot's heart, a place where learning felt like play, where history danced, where humor made space for wonder. Fans remember the cavemen, the flapper, and so forth. They remember the song, It's Fun to Be Free, echoing through the Omnimover, through childhood, through time. And they share stories online and they share photos. World of Motion wasn't just an attraction, it was a feeling. It was a memory of motion, music, and meaning. And in every nostalgic note, we heard its echo. Freedom is fun, progress is personal, and the best journeys never really end. So to wrap up, looking back, we really see a crossroads, especially in Epcot history at this time. World of Motion gave us laughter, music, and memory. It taught through theater. It uplifted through whimsy. And when it closed, we lost something. We lost a ride that trusted its guests to feel, reflect, and smile. In its place came speed, realism, and immersion. Of course, Test Track thrilled, it impressed, it aligned with the future. But the tone had unmistakably shifted. The gentle rhythm of storytelling gave way to acceleration. The characters stepped aside, and the data took center stage. But yet, both attractions shared a central heartbeat. A belief that motion really truly matters, that how we move shapes how we live. What we lost was softness, but what we gained was spectacle. What remains, of course, is the challenge to carry forward the best of both. To remember that progress isn't just fast, it's felt, and that the road ahead should still make room for joy. So we talk about our 3 pillars, and as we always do, I'll start with immersion. I give this attraction a score of 7 out of 10. Now that's a very good score. It was very consistent theme throughout the whole attraction. The Omnimover's smooth glide supported visual storytelling, and the scene changes were clear and clever. Audio was crisp and varied. Lighting was theatrical and focused your eyes on what it needed to do. And of course, there were stylized characters that really invited emotional connections. Now, there were lots of surprises. Of course, there were comedic reveals and unexpected gags. The animatronics and the set design, they were charming and they were effective, but they lacked cutting-edge spectacle in certain ways. There's no problem with the music, staging, and narration. The queue itself, it was functional, but it was very lightly themed with minimal buildup. Basically, you entered the building and you hopped on the ride, and that was it. So I give World of Motion an immersion score of 7. On the other hand, storytelling, you cannot dispute World of Motion storytelling chops. I give it a 9 out of 10. This had a very cohesive narrative. The attraction followed a clear chronological arc from ancient mobility to futuristic motion. And there were role assignments at play. You of course, while you were passive observers, you felt like a time traveler. You went through history, very much like Spaceship Earth did. Each scene conveyed its message through expressive staging and lots of humor. The ride affirmed that transportation reflects human progress with clarity and optimism. Like I mentioned, the queue, this is why it's not a 10. The queue in the pre-show was very minimal, but it fit perfectly with Epcot's mission. It blended education, imagination, and emotional resonance. Finally, for delight, I give it an 8. It was a wonderful attraction that many people have strong feelings about. Of course, there was a whimsical exterior. You got to see the Omnimover winding its way around it. There was an emotional connection that people took away from the ride. The attraction was calm, but it had a theatrical rhythm. It was more contemplative than it was kinetic, but it was emotionally engaging. And there were scenes like the traffic jam and the flying machine and the center core finale that left visual and emotional impressions, of course. Replayability was great because you got to go through and you got to laugh at all the jokes all over again. There's no problem with accessibility. It was inclusive to all folks. And its ride length, it was very generous, but it allowed for the full development of the story without overstaying its welcome too much. So overall, I give it a 7.96. I'll be very interested to see what you all give it. Please go to grandmiraculous.com. Again, the code tonight is WARD, W-A-R-D. And if you haven't caught up on it, it's to tribute one of our core Imagineers, Ward Kimball, who you just heard from. So, our trivia answer. Like I mentioned, there were 188 audio animatronics in World of Motion. Just think about that. You know, some of the attractions that we know and love now have a handful. So to create that many audio animatronics in one place was quite a feat. And we got to take our hat off to it. So we've concluded World of Motion. I think it only properly makes sense to continue our story and our Grand and Miraculous journey in episode 18 at the exact same place. So next week, we're going to talk about Test Track. All of its variations from 1.0 to 2.0 to 3.0. And we'll talk about why this attraction works. A little bit about what we lost with its transformation from World of Motion to Test Track. But we'll talk about some of the innovations it created too. Many rides that we know and love today, like Radiator Springs Racers, owe their existence to Test Track. So it was a true pioneer in many ways. So I look forward to having you here. Same time, same place, here next week, next Tuesday at 6:30. I will end as I usually do with Ray Bradbury's words. Gather around the next great campfire. Let us seek and know and understand and dream a new book, a new instruction book to fly great spaceship Earth through the uncharted seas of the future world. Lock in a dream that is your own. Find what find what truth is in your blood and beat a path from here to there. Your life is yours to own and be. The world is yours to shape and change. The stars are yours as just reward. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you for 450 subs. Can't wait to have you along for the rest of the journey. And I hope you have a great week. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and share it out. Thanks, everybody.